And context here. I'll let obviously this video is crazy but big.
At any level, practical, strategic, EMPs, whatever, are is something that should only be used as a last resort.
He's talking about in the United States.
And even then, very
That's still
by
going on.
escalation ladder, as they say. With me, I don't care if you start throwing nukes immediately. Responsible, but immediately. And then
how do you responsibly throw nukes in the
For real. I would like to know. For real.
Responsibly just throw nukes out into the
Wow.
push.
There's just too many steps to finding a therapist. It takes 5 minutes. No problem. I'll need a great one tomorrow. Yeah, I'm walking my sister's dog. Stop. You need therapy.
Yeah, with Rula, getting help is easier than talking yourself out of it. So we had this situation that happened recently with a family that was on the market trying to purchase a home. And they've been in the market searching for a little while. They had actually went to Zillow, Realtor.com, were calling on listings that way. Oftentimes finding out the agent they were talking to wasn't even a listing agent. Or they were going to open houses, looking at open houses and things like that. I think they wrote a couple of offers, and they were getting pretty beat out by them in those offer situations. In fact, they were so frustrated they didn't write on those things. They packed offers in. And one of their friends told them, hey, before you give up on this whole thing, you might want to reach out to Josh. And so I talked to him. And when I talked to him, I'm going to share with you what I told them, which was the first thing was that, hey, you're probably not frustrated at the offer situation at the time. You're probably frustrated that you're not winning when you're in those offer situations. And so I talked to them about the importance of sitting down in advance with the agent and really design what I would call a home search plan. And in advance, what you try to do is help your buyers become market experts in the price range that they're shopping. And when you do that, really when the right home does present itself, they're familiar with the home prices in the area, they're familiar with the market, they're familiar with all of the other comparable properties. They have total confidence to make an offer when the right home presents themselves. And there's some education that goes into that. And a good agent is going to walk them. The next thing I talked to them about was how important it was to work with a full-time real estate agent. I'm talking about somebody who's working 40 or 50 hours a week is showing up in an office every day, because the collaboration that takes place when real estate agents are working together, they're sharing properties with each other, they're sharing good deals in the market, they're sharing ones that they may have already looked at that they thought were great, and they may not be for their client, but good for somebody else's client. So there's a lot of momentum that takes place just by pairing up with an agent that actually is active in the market. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from buyers that they paired up with an agent that wasn't as excited as they were to find the home, and it only led to frustration, disappointment. So I mean, in our situation, we're often going to hire people that are not looking to commit themselves fully. Right? The next thing that we talked about was how important it was to actually have access to inventory that's not on the market. And so, for example, if you're only looking online, we're looking at the very same homes that other buyers are looking at, right? And so at our office, we're bringing in 40 to 50 listings per month. And on many cases, our sellers are telling us, hey, we'll sign a document to share your home with all of our buyers, right?
Ay, por Dios.
For sales, photography, staging, and all the things. So they're saying, hey, Josh, bring your clients if you'd like to in advance. And so our buyers are getting, a sneak peek, if you will, and early access to some of these properties long before they ever hit the market, which obviously is a huge competitive advantage, right? And the last thing I talk about is just in those competing offer situations. I think that those are the best things that can happen, because it's instant feedback that you're looking at the right properties. You're not just finding something that you think you like. It's something that everyone needs. That's a good thing, because when you go to sell that home, you're probably more assured that, hey, when I go to sell my home, I'm likely to have more people interested in buying this home too. So we don't want our clients afraid of that. Instead, what we want is a strategy plan that we can make sure they're going to get an offer that's ready
accepted. And so an example I gave you is those folks were in the fund just within about a month. And they have a completely different outlook on real estate now because they're living in the ideal home, they got a great price, and that's exactly the outcomes that we're looking for all of our clients.
Hey everyone, geophysicist Paul Bird here with some breaking news. We just had a magnitude 6.2 earthquake strike Italy. This being at a depth of 247 kilometers, and this is the largest earthquake to strike the great nation of Italy in more than a decade. So this is a big shaker, though not really widely felt because of its depth at 247 kilometers. So some reports came in of light shaking in this area here, but in general, this is not a big earthquake, it's not a destructive earthquake, and it's not an earthquake where you have to worry about a tsunami. Though it did occur off the coast at 247 kilometers down, this is taking place in the mantle of the earth. So you have first the crust, and then you have this boundary zone in between the crust and the mantle known as the magnetosphere, and then you have the mantle, of course, the upper mantle, lower mantle, outer core, inner core, as you go down towards the center. So being in the mantle makes a very unique earthquake, and what's especially notable in my mind as I see this is that this follows up after what was previously the strongest earthquake to strike Italy in a decade, which I was there for, though I also did not feel the magnitude 6 on the 9th of March, because this one occurred even deeper at 375 kilometers below the surface. So there were almost no reports of shaking for that one, that also occurring off the coast. But two back-to-back earthquakes in a short time frame geologically after more than 10 years, where we didn't really have any magnitude 6 or greater earthquake, is certainly a notable development and speaking to the changing dynamics deep in the earth because of plate tectonics. We have the African plate right here. If I really zoom out, you can see that the African plate is a big plate. Okay, we have the African plate moving north, smashing into the Eurasian plate, and it's specifically right here with the Ionian Sea and the Tyrrhenian Sea, where you get subduction of the African plate underneath the Eurasian plate, forming the Campanian arc, which is why you have so many volcanoes here in Italy. I can turn on some of the major ones there. Etna, we see Vesuvius, and Cantico Grey, super volcano, this magnitude 6 occurring basically right underneath Cantico Grey, which is why I covered that in a moment and happened back in March. We also see Marsili volcano here. This is a back arc spreading center, an underwater volcano created from the subduction of the African plate underneath the Eurasian plate. And so we see Marsili volcano there, very large structure, but the actual volcano itself is just this ridge, which is still not small. We measure this, it's about 50 kilometers across, all right? So that's pretty big. If we measure all the way across in this caldera-looking structure, we get 130 kilometers, or even if you go to here, 110 kilometers. So Marsili volcano is quite significant. We see this older back arc spreading center there because, of course, the plate is being generated. You get this movement. So this is from like 4 million years ago. It's now quiescent. It's moved off further to the northwest west. But this magnitude 6.2 coming in here around Calabria, south of this magnitude 6, but in general, you see how they are roughly forming this perimeter zone around Marsili and also with all the volcanoes here. We have Etna, we have Stromboli, and other volcanoes with these island volcanoes here, right? Climate activity we get from them, and then you go up, you get Vesuvius, and you get Cantico Grey. So big magnitude 6.2 earthquake has just struck Italy. Let's jump right in. We'll begin by quickly examining our latest earthquakes according to the USGS for the past week, magnitude 4.5 or greater. And we see the 6.2 there coming in right near the top of the newest earthquakes. I'm reporting on this for you as soon as I can. Just happened. 5.4 Indonesia has just struck right afterwards. So if we go here and sort by largest magnitude for the week, you now see this 6.2 holding the top slot, and we see these other magnitude 6 underneath it. So we haven't been having a tremendous amount of seismic activity. Seismic activity has been moderate, weak, but the 6.2 is big, and notice the depth of it, 247 kilometers. That's quite deep. So this is a notable development for Italy, especially when you take that magnitude 6 into the equation. Here we see our did you feel it intensity map for this magnitude 6. Now this just happened, so we're going to get more reports with time. Here we see our responses right now, and we see that there's like 20 responses. But because it's so deep, people really aren't feeling this, and the people that did feel it reported as like light shaking, or effectively really weak shaking. No damage is going to result from this earthquake, but because it is deep, you see that some of these reports are pretty far away. Because the hypocenter is so far down, that seismic energy radiates out in all directions. That still happens if the hypocenter is very close to the surface, but has a better ability to kind of maintain its amplitude going out. So we see these light and weak reports all across this part of southern Italy, even some with Sicily there. So this is quite significant. If you look at our moment tensor plot, this tells us what type of earthquake this was. And to keep this really simple, we look at these numbers right here, okay? There's two fault plane solutions because based off of the waveform data, there's two potential fault planes that are ruptured along. We don't know unless there's more geologic context. With these occurring in the mantle, you really can't say which one it is, okay? But we see this earthquake's a bit unusual, as you'll see. The first fault plane solution has a strike of 259 degrees, and that right there for the second one is 168 degrees. That's like the strike angle, like the compass direction, you could say. The second number in the list is the angle of the fault.
All Domino's pizzas are half off however you order. But hurry, it's this week only. Go, go, go!
On the front lines, you see the problem before it becomes one. PG&E on the front lines for us all.
Like the fairy tale says, not too big, not too small. Lavender Hills Assisted Living is just right. Small enough to feel like home, but large enough to have extras like a full-time activities director. Lavender Hills Assisted Living understands the importance of creating a real home, making the transition comfortable and easy. Seniors enjoy single residence rooms, home-cooked meals, and compassionate care. Our home is your home. Lavender Hills Assisted Living in Reading.
So here we have it being exactly 90 degrees, a perfect vertical fault, 247 kilometers below surface. Here we see for our second fault plane solution, it's a fairly shallow fault with a slope of 34 degrees. But what's weird with the second solution is that it's basically right at 0. Now, with the rate, which is what this is called, if it's 0 or 180, that means it's a perfect strike slip event, where the faults grind past each other like this. If it's negative, that means you have this extensional event where one plate slips below the other and overall you get expansion. If it's positive, you have a reverse thrust event and you actually get compression. So we see that both these numbers for the rate are negative, but this one effectively being 0, showing that that fault plane solution is for a fairly shallow dipping strike slip event at 247 kilometers down. This fault plane solution shows it being a perfectly vertical fault, and it's half extensional and also half strike slip because it's at negative 124. So if it's perfectly negative 90, that would be a straight movement down with no oblique movement. So this is an extensional oblique slip event, and both of these solutions are odd in their own way, but this is the data that we have from these waveforms that come in. So this 6.2 occurring deep in the mantle, not really a normal earthquake, and it follows up after this magnitude 6 that occurred on the 9th of March. Here we see that, and you feel responses, basically you don't see anything, right? I think 2 people there maybe reported it. I don't really even know what the white squares mean. No, they did not feel it. So no one felt the magnitude 6. I was in Rome. I didn't feel the magnitude 6 because it was 375 kilometers down, much deeper. 247 is still very deep. It's an unusual depth in general. So to get these deeper earthquakes, it's a little unusual. I'll explain this induction regime in a little bit. So here we see the moment tensor plot with this magnitude 6 that occurred on the 9th of March. And this is a bit of a different earthquake. This, instead of it being an extensional event or purely strike slip like the last one, this is a reverse oblique event. So it's a compressional reverse thrust, but it has an oblique component to it. As we see here, our rate is positive, meaning that there was a movement up. But since it's not exactly at 90, that means that there is some sort of oblique component to it. And we look at our fault dip solutions, and it shows 54 and 69 degrees. So fairly steep dipping faults, but not perfectly vertical. Either way, it was a reverse oblique thrust, either in this direction or that direction, meaning a compression deep underground. This is the magnitude 6 that occurred before at a deeper depth of magnitude 6. So we're seeing a very obvious trend as it relates to the recent earthquake activity for Italy. We have this magnitude 6 earthquake that struck on the 9th of March, at the time, strongest in 10 years, occurring at a depth of 375 kilometers, but very, very deep, compressing the deep earth under that location, right? There's this compressional event to it. And then, less than 3 months later, we have this magnitude 6.2 striking 247 kilometers down. So not only is it bigger, releasing 2 times more energy approximately than this magnitude 6, it's also shallower, closer to the surface. This time, there is very likely an extensional component to it. So we're seeing this up and down motion deep below the crust with Italy, with the 2 strongest quakes that hit back to back in like a decade. It's right in the zone of intense volcanism. And really, I see this being related to our Sealy volcano here, this back arc spreading center, that is influenced by the subduction of the African plate. You could even be seeing, and this is likely the case, we're probably seeing interslab earthquakes here, because this one being closer to that subduction point, then this is being further away, the slab gets subducted even deeper down. It's likely that it's an interslab earthquake is being the African plate, and there is, the plate is breaking apart, but also maybe it's compressing at times because it's kind of getting dumped up, and then it just has a big fault rupture. Now, what we sometimes see with subduction, that as these plates go down, they can actually tear apart, and then you can get new convection and flow of like hydrothermal fluid, magma, and melt and more into those cracks and into those tears that can drive volcanism. So we see how we had this older back arc volcano here, used to be basically there. Of course, everything's changing a little bit, but this is actively creating plate going like this. It's been pushed out. Now Marseille volcanoes here. And the really interesting thing about the Marseille volcano is that its 2 most active periods of activity perfectly line up with when we've had increased geomagnetic activity. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you go back to about 2 million years ago, and we saw this period of rapid spreading from Marseille volcano, and that perfectly corresponds with when there was a bunch of back and forth in Earth's magnetic field in the polarity. So it was undergoing these reversals quite rapidly. It was like 4, 5, or 6 reversals in a pretty short time frame, from about 1.78 to 2.14 million years ago, something like that. Okay? Then things cooled off for about a million years or so, and then 0.78 million years ago, 80,000 years ago, Marseille volcano started to re-accelerate with its spreading rate, where it's kind of been ever since. Well, what happened 780,000 years ago? It was the last geomagnetic reversal. So it's like a perfect clock in terms of this being resonant for some reason with the magnetic field of the Earth as it relates to reversals, which are the most significant thing that can happen in Earth's magnetic field other than just completely going away. Now we see these 2 earthquakes right in this location. The gray is the most active it's been in decades, perhaps even going all the way back to like 1500 with the Monte Nuevo eruption. 2025 was a record year for earthquake activity, uplift, gas emissions that came from gray. There's recently just a magnitude 4.4 earthquake that struck, the first one in 2026. And we get these big earthquakes that strike Italy. Thankfully, not widely felt, not destructive, no tsunami risk, but they are back-to-back, the biggest in a decade, and it's clear trend of getting closer to the surface and getting stronger. So I will keep you up to date on everything that's happening as it relates to the situation here. There's a lot of moving pieces. I've been covering Antifa Gray and all these things for quite some time now. So please subscribe to stay up to date. And if you want to stay up to date in general, what's happening with the Earth, energetic earthquakes, volcanoes, geomagnetic activity, extreme weather, solar activity, space weather, planetary alignment, interstellar cosmic forces, everything and more. I'm your guy. I'm your host, Tom Burns. Thank you all so much for watching. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all.
You plan. Hey Google, what's the fastest?
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, America's most watched news units, now streaming simultaneously with all of breaking news everything on Disney Plus. Most watched, most listened, now on Disney Plus every night.
Tonight, breaking news on the brink of collapse. The U.S. ceasefire with Iran tested tonight. Iran launching missiles and drones at U.S. troops. The U.S. bombing Iranian radar and drone sites. Iran threatening to cut off talks. President Trump saying today, if they're over, they're over. And then what he told ABC News late today. Also developing tonight what we've now learned about the scare on a United flight out of Newark. The pilot's alarming announcement to passengers why he was suddenly turning the plane back. Federal authorities waiting. In Los Angeles, the scare at the front door, well-known pop singer Sabrina Carpenter and the alleged stalker, authorities say trying to force his way into her home. Tonight, the police officer charged with assault. Disturbing video showing him repeatedly punching a woman during the arrest. The race against time tonight, rescuers hearing possible knocking deep inside a
4.1
as they
magnitude
try to
earthquake.
track
Oh my God.
miners. The Ebola outbreak growing tonight, the number of deaths now doubling in just 4 days. And now with 4 American airports that will screen passengers coming to the U.S. Tonight, the mystery over the Northeast, the sonic boom heard by millions. Reports of a fireball in the sky tonight, but authorities have now revealed about this. The severe weather we're watching tonight, the storms sweeping through Denver and where the storms hit next. And tonight here, our interview with Barry Manilow, his cancer surgery, and will he ever sing again? His very personal reveal right here tonight.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, reporting tonight from Los Angeles.
Good evening. It is great to be back with all of you at home tonight. We do begin here with the breaking news. The U.S. ceasefire with Iran on the brink of collapse. Iran firing missiles. The U.S. bombing Iranian sites. And what President Trump told ABC News about this late today. The Iranian military launching missiles and drones at U.S. troops in Kuwait. Iran threatening to cut off talks. The U.S. bombing Iranian radar and drone sites, calling it self-defense.
So annoying.
Amid all of this today, oil prices going up again. And what President Trump told our John Carl late today. Rachel Scott, keep us off from the White House.
Tonight, the U.S. ceasefire on the brink of collapse. Iran firing missiles at U.S. troops in Kuwait. Oil prices rising, and the USA retaliated in self-defense. Today, Iran threatening to cut off negotiations entirely after Israel targeted southern Lebanon again. President Trump today said he couldn't care less if the talks collapse, saying if they're over, they're over. But late today, ABC News has learned the president did get on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to try to halt the bombing in southern Lebanon. to keep the Iranians at the negotiating table. Netanyahu insists Israel will not leave southern Lebanon. The president telling our John Carl, there was a little glitch today, but I turned that one around very quickly. But tonight, amid the enormous stakes now 3 months into this war with Iran and global oil prices inching up today, gas prices here at home hovering at $4.27 a gallon. The president fully aware of the pressure to negotiate a deal with Iran.
And so tonight, hours after Iran threatened to call off these talks, the president insists they are back on. But the stakes here are so high. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed, and Iran has not agreed to turn over that enriched uranium. David.
Rachel Scott with the breaking news from the White House. Rachel, thank you. We are also learning more tonight about a scare on the United flight out of Newark. In the air, the pilot's sudden alarming announcement to passengers why he was turning the plane back. What was noticed? The pilot telling passengers federal authorities would be waiting. Here's GOP.
Oh my goodness. They messed up all that so bad. Hallelujah. Let's go.
Four-letter word, no, they're evacuating aircraft.
That four-letter word, air traffic control, was referenced. And David, that plane landed safely at Newark, swept it and cleared the takeoff. Very scary moments for those passengers.
Not one word caused so much chaos, GOP, as tonight, GOP. Here in Los Angeles tonight, we have alarming images captured in the front door of well-known pop singer Sabrina Carpenter's home. Authorities say an alleged stalker trying to force his way into her home. Here's Trevor.
Tonight, frightening images of an alleged stalker at the front door of pop superstar Sabrina Carpenter outright had a temporary restraining order. Reportedly entered her Los Angeles home, claiming her tenant noticing Carpenter's security team, then removing him. He was arrested after removing the property. 24 hours later, after Applegate was released from custody, Carpenter's legal team says he returned to the house and looked it up in the driveway for 2 hours, and then the next day he returned again. Nope, it's like espresso. Please, Carpenter has become a massive star. Applegate did not be reached to comment, but Carpenter's team thinks he's been stalking the singer since April. Carpenter says he's the stranger, describing his actions as calculated and aggressive, which is deeply alarming. And if the hearing is set for later this month,
David, Trevor, all right here in Los Angeles for this tonight. Thank you. Receiving the police officer charged with North Carolina. We have disturbing video showing him repeatedly punching the that officer immediately fired in the morning tonight. The video was taken down. Here's our Chief Justice.
Jerry Moore tackled by now overshadowing North Carolina police officer Carson Hyder. Officer said multiple punches while on top of him. You can hear bystanders shouting as another officer intervened. Authorities have said officers were conducting a criminal investigation on account of suspicious email. Moore's family says her nose was broken in the incident on Friday. On Saturday, Officer Hyder, who was 22 years old, was fined. Today, Hyder turned himself in and faced an assault charge of his own. Court records show that Moore was involved in a previous incident with Hyder last year, leading to charges of resisting arrest. Moore's family says she is homeless and suffers from mental health issues. He needs to be charged for so that he cannot put on another bag of strap or police car. Moore in front of each car wherever he will hit. That's what we do. Hyder charged with assault inflicted serious injury. He's out on bond and is expected to be in court for a hearing tomorrow.
Yeah. You full review because you suck.
Overseas tonight, the race against time, rescuing two people still trapped in the house. Rescuers have reported hearing knocking in that tunnel system. Are they still alive? Here's Rick Clemens.
Tonight, rescue divers are running out of time to reach the last two villagers, believed to be trapped deep inside the flooded cave and lapsed.
But he water below, and he is dripping, which is a song for us that there's something there.
The divers earlier said they heard knocking in the cave, but some of them tell us it could be a false alarm. Rescuers are determined to keep searching after guiding the first survivor to freedom through a claustrophobic maze of jagged rock and chest-high water on Friday. The next day, 4 men managed to wiggle their way out of the cave on their own, hungry and exhausted, but overcome the river. Teams are pumping water out of the cave while using radar and satellite imagery to map shafts that would lead them to the chamber where the men might be trapped.
David, it's now nearly 2 weeks since those men searching for gold in this cave were trapped by floods. The rescuers tell us they are now gearing up for another day and are not giving up. David?
Rick Clemens with us tonight, Rick. Thank you. We turn now to the Ebola outbreak growing tonight. The number of Ebola deaths doubling in just the past 3 days. And now the 4 American airplanes have the screened passengers coming into the U.S. Here's Matt Rivers.
Tonight, growing concerns over the spread of Ebola as health workers struggle to contain the outbreak. Reported confirmed deaths now more than doubled since Thursday alone. 17 cases of demographic Congo Doctors Without Borders calling it unprecedented, saying the reality today is that nobody knows the true story. America, returning to in South Sudan, is now re-entering one of our airports. Dallas, Bush, Houston, Atlanta, or JFK. Sort of like this, sort of makeshift. You know, Michael Rubin, a medical student working in Uganda, was on his way to Michigan. His flight was rerouted to Dallas International Airport in Virginia for management and screenings. First thing they did was check my temperature, and then after my temperature came back normal, they asked me a series of questions. The Americans coming home from the DRC, Uganda, and South Sudan must now fly into one of those 4 airports for additional screening. There are real concerns for the World Cup a week away. That said, CDC considers the risk of water spread here in the U.S. zero. David?
And you'll continue. Anti-weaponization plan. For attacking the Capitol on January 6th. The judge also ordering the Trump name removed from the Kennedy Center. So President Trump is now thinking about all of this to our gun law.
President Trump told NBC News he will abide by recent court rulings temporarily blocking his $1.8 billion weaponization fund. We are subject to the courts, the president said. At this moment, that's what it is. Trump said the fund, which could grant payments to people who were prosecuted for attacking the Capitol on January 6th, is a good, wonderful thing. But he said if a court doesn't allow it, right now a court hasn't held up, what can you do? On Friday, a judge in the Eastern District of Virginia ruled the fund cannot give out a single dollar until further proceedings on whether the fund is legal. Today, the Justice Department said while they disagree strongly with the decision, they will abide by the court's ruling. The fund has received bipartisan pushback. Former Vice President Mike Pence called it, quote, deeply offensive. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called it one of the most corrupt schemes ever launched by a president, out to kill the slush fund before 1 cent was out the door.
will not appeal, but instead would allow a full and complete transfer of the Senate to Congress.
David, President Trump is facing challenges with his plans to celebrate America's 250th birthday. So, music performers have backed out of the planned festivities here in Washington. The president says he will instead hold a Make America Great Again rally. And as for that $1.8 billion fund, the controversy isn't over. Today, Senate Republican leader John Thune said he would like the White House to make it clear that the fund is completely shut down, regardless of what happens in the courts.
John Carl breaking the story with news from the president and his reaction to John's day. Tonight we are here in California on the eve of its high-stakes primary. The race for governor center stage before 5 candidates making their 11th hour push against the Sarah in the lead, followed by Democrat Tom Steyer, Republican Chet Bianco, and Democrat Keith Ford. Voters can cast ballots for any candidate, the top 2 candidates, regardless of party, in the general election in November. And in the race for mayor here in Los Angeles, incumbent Karen Bass spending on challenges from Lydia Rahman, reality TV star Spencer Pratt. But to come back to the broadcast tonight, there could be a major breakthrough tonight, potential treatment for a certain type of cancer or protocol. Also, that mystery over the Northeast, that sonic boom heard by so many reports of a fireball in the sky. Well, tonight, the authorities have now revealed about this. The severe weather tonight, the storm sweeping through Denver, and where the storms hit next. Also, big news tonight involving Taylor Swift and the new Toy Story, how this came together. And tonight, right here, I'll interview Barry Manilow. Apple's Can't Ever Sing Again. It's very personal video. Tonight, that mystery of the Northeast side. Something that's outheard by millions across the Northeast. But NASA tonight, after confirming it was a fire zone, traveling at roughly 42,000 miles per hour, breaking up 31 miles per hour. NASA says the energy release was equivalent to about 230 times of TNT. We're tracking severe weather in the plains tonight, a cool around the tail coming down hard in Denver, severe storms in Colorado. But look at that. Big news this evening involving Taylor Swift and the new Toy Story, Not Sing Together. And our interview tonight with Barry Manilow, Will You Ever Sing Again? To the index tonight, the homicide results for new drug.
I'm not gonna get up.
Tonight we are here in our Los Angeles bureau, and a note about the reason why ABC News and our station here in LA, KABC, honored with their Peabody Award last night for our coverage of the LA fires.
We're now 24 hours into this disaster, and we've got another multiple homes on the road here in flames. Yeah, the wind is just pushing this fire from home to home to home.
You'll remember we were on the ground with the broadcast for several days, partnering with our incredible team at KABC. I needed the time to so many people showing up at work, reporting, and worrying about their home members and their own homes. The teams on the ground here live this world, putting on their own millions, even not knowing that home will survive. And then our SoCal strong Disney ABC Good Morning Maryland back to LA at our station, raising millions for families. So we were so honored. I know you see me here in the chair tonight. Please know it was this dedicated team behind the scenes here at LA. We're so grateful for it. When we come back to the White House, we're going to be hearing about cancer. Will you ever sing again? It's very personal. Barry Manilow and his very personal conversation with her this time. His treatment after lung cancer surgery, his voice.
And you remember that, right? 82-year-old Barry Manilow and his piano
definitely and that is certainly the case tonight because there's something real weird right like real. And you know when you have individuals or organizations that and then we're gonna have to speculate because there's also a measure of like quietly trying to in Congress that I only see a couple people talking about. But we're just going to start. You know what? Well, I'm not just while we get started, is I'm going to remind everybody of this. This to give us like a basis because I think that everybody. What I don't like is when people light up certain kind of hidden group and they don't notice when it looks like they're doing something right? Which is exactly how this started. Okay, so I saw a post from Jim Holden at TV USA, and he was talking about how our president had completely lit up Bibi Netanyahu. It was like he told him, like literally losing the effort. He's like, he told him that he's fucking crazy. The only reason that he was not in prison is because of him. He needs to chill the fuck out. And I was like, wait, what is happening? Like, I don't understand. Like, what? Really weird. Really weird. Then, oh my God, it's awesome. Anyway, then the responses to this and what's being piled on. Okay, so we're just going to start right there. By the way, I need to do these live streams because if I titled anything remotely referencing that, it's like, oh, all right. Sure, that'll be true to anything. Okay, check this out. But here's another thing to start with, in case you guys have never seen this. Like, this is what you're dealing with in the current state in terms of like who's in charge. Okay? So like just a quick couple minutes here of like the current state Trump administration and the people around.
It's typical Trump. Almost no things. Do you think she can pimp out our proud servicemen and women to the Prince of Saudi Arabia?
What's going on right now is something very clear between our country and Israel. Like something real fucking weird that is happening like right now. I'm going to give you context.
That is disgraceful. And once again shows that you are unfit to serve as our commander.
Trump's a really bad candidate, and frankly, I think a really bad person.
For the top pictures, I don't know who you are. Well, this is what happens when a leading presidential candidate goes on competing with American anger, bitterness, and frustration.
This is a guy who said that the Trump campaign was not working, that he's fought his own 5 million.
There's nothing in our Constitution that gives you the right or without express consent of Congress.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
By the way, I really think there's like an ICBM headed our direction right now. It's not that kind of thing. But there's something in you for some reason. Because everybody's acting all wrong.
To turn over the conservative movement to a person who has no ideas of any substance on the important issues, completely opposed to the United States to black individuals. It's a race bait, xenophobia, religious bait.
Here's the thing with politics. He was forced to change the religion, so he wanted to change the law so that the military could avoid the law. That's all it is.
I think he's great. I think he's done a bit of wrong. We may not have done it in our hypnosis. He's out. What's the question about script knowledge?
Here's the problem with Trump. He says, go ahead and kill the families. Go ahead and torture. Go ahead and go further than waterboarding. What happens when people follow those orders or don't follow them? It's not clear that Donald Trump will have to attack.
The whole point that I'm trying to is like, why are these the only people who are
that they don't let take. Doesn't represent my part. That is that men need to wear the military life.
Because of the rallies, has told the supporters to basically beat up people who are in the country.
There is definitely a little bit of Donald Trump's support that has its basis in racism and xenophobia.
Fellow service members and I, we are not your prostitutes. You are not our pimp.
So Trump, I think that he's not just in his leading the white working class to a very dark place. No matter what happens in this election, for years to come, there are many people on the right leading voters of ours.
Okay, so you guys get right? You guys get so I think the conference that Western world is ran, right? Okay. Scissor you later. Love you, fun. Okay. That's kind of actually exactly what I'm saying. I don't okay, Sandy, thank you very much.